Okay, we're live. This is Rock Your Life with Nora Finch live with my guest here. We're going to talk to in a few minutes, Ajaan Geoff. I want to call you Gregory. Hi.
Hi.
From San Diego or close to San Diego?
Near San Diego, yes.
Okay. And so thank you today. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, or have never listened to my show before, it is inspired by my 20 plus years in holistic wellness and my training in the Israeli self-defense system of Krav Maga. And it is also inspired by my social activism since the age of 14. You can find me on rockyourlifewithnorafinch.com and LinkedIn. And I am also a mental readiness coach. Okay, so I will explain to you why I have included or wanted to include Ajaan in my leadership series, which is part of my Reclaiming Our Power, because finding our own guidance system, that is a way to reclaim our power. So a reason that I always wanted to do this show, one of the main reasons is because of what I think our American our American culture focuses on, which is basically our exterior instead of our inner character. So that means fame, power, material possessions, our physical image, drama, sex, all of these sorts of things, these things that we own. And this affects our self-worth, how we feel about ourselves, as well as how we look at the world. So today's show, I wanted to talk about this and also how being a leader in our own guidance system, we can help create a future in heaven. I call it here on earth. So you are going to hear from opinions on happiness from two wannabe scholarly writers who some might believe that we worship statues, pretending to fast and still eating fried chicken.
That's why most of the day.
Right. And so, just try to do our best, everybody, and following rules is just, you will learn later in life. Okay. So of course, what better time to be talking about this during the pandemic, which now we are in February of 2021 and all not only social unrest, but if we're not going through our own personal struggle, we know somebody that is. So I hope this show helps provide some outside the box solutions so we can leave behind the drugs, the alcohol, the promiscuous sex, the gambling, all these things that keep us in a lower vibrational state. And so this is also why I want to dedicate this to first responders. So I didn't think I would end up with some white dude who, like me, grew up in a farming type of community on the East Coast, Long Island, and let alone who speaks fluent Thai. Even though I thought he might ruin my rep, I decided to invite him on. And I knew that you were the one for me because you sweared before I did. So I wanted to say to everybody else that is a part of being accepting, because I wasn't sure that, not to say I swear a lot, but somebody would be expecting, especially even in a Buddhist monk, we see a list of these things, of how you're supposed to be. You know what I mean? And it's like, again, it's not to put a monk up on a pedestal sort of a thing, which we will talk about. Also, too, this show is also very important to me. Of course, long story short, my mom is from Thailand. And while I did not like her and we did not get along, and I still very much thank her and blessed to have her in my life and bringing me Buddhism. So also, that's also very meaningful to me. Okay. Ajaan Geoff Phalang, 44-year practicing monk of the Thai forest tradition, which he will explain, has an extensive website with audio, and I don't even know how many hundreds of paperbacks that you probably have. Makes you very unique, definitely very unique. Not everybody is doing this. Not every monk is. And one of the things, too, that got me that I wanted to talk to him more about to kind of explain to other people is that he said that he just wanted to be happy in life. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to dive into that more because I do believe happiness is fleeting, but it needs to be maintained. if you want it to stay. You know what I mean? But I do believe that I have become more happier as an adult because I've let go of negative feelings like about myself. So that's my take on that. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a brief, while I can tell people a little bit about your upbringing, we can just talk a little bit. Okay, I'll say it first and then you add to it so it clips. Okay, so potato farm boy from Long Island, but you also lived a little bit in DC, right? And you wanted to initially be a writer and architect, and you didn't really have much of an interest in like the American conventional ways of living.
Right.
Is that correct? Like either the picket fence or the 2 kids or the minivan, or because I know this is like this is the 50s.
No, I graduated from college in the early 70s.
Okay, so at that point though, you were still thinking like that. You're like, I'm not interested in that.
Right.
And okay, so you go from there.
Okay, I got a chance to teach in Thailand, and I'd had some experience when I was in college. They'd invited a Thai monk and a Japanese Zen monk to teach meditation for a month. And I took the course with them, and I said, this is really cool. You can just sit down, focus on your breath, and you come away feeling a lot better as a result. And you feel more at home inside your own skin, let's put it that way. And so I thought I'd look for an opportunity to go to Thailand and maybe learn more about this. And so I got a fellowship to teach in Chiang Mai University. And so I went over for 2 years, and at the end of my time there, I happened to meet a teacher that I really liked and really respected.
So when you asked, let me ask you though, back there, when you said you felt better, what do you mean? Did you feel stressed? Did you feel sad?
Well, I was, sophomore in college, a lot of stress. I had a roommate who tried to commit suicide at one point, and it was during that period when the opportunity came to practice meditation. And I found it was a great place just to sort of settle down and just be by myself and take care of my own mind. And it felt like, sort of, as I said, more comfortable in my skin. My mind was more of felt like a whole, WHOLE. And that it, I
The
just
feeling.
felt more at ease with myself. It felt more stable.
Okay, so you started studying right at that point?
Right.
Is that when? Okay, you started studying in Chiang Mai?
And no, I was teaching in Chiang Mai for 2 years, and then I was looking around for different teachers, and I could never find any that I really felt inspired by. And it wasn't until just before I was scheduled to leave Thailand that I met a teacher that I really liked. He was very inspiring.
Okay.
He was living off in a very rural area on a very, very small monastery, but he seemed really happy and very wise. And I said, this is something I want.
Okay.
And he said he wasn't born this way. It was something he acquired through the training. And this is something that really appealed to me, the idea that happiness could be a skill, something you could actually work on and develop. And it wasn't just hit or miss.
Okay. And you said because you saw the ups and downs too of like your parents' relationship. So you were like, it was almost like maybe too much, you wanted something maybe more stable feeling?
Right, and also just something
consistent.
I could trust more, because in the case of my parents' marriage, they'd had what I thought was a really good marriage, and all of a sudden turned 180 degrees, and just got really. And I kept thinking, gosh, if love can turn into such intense dissatisfaction and intense dislike, I don't know if I want that. I want to find something better, something more solid.
Do you think you were taught in the American culture, like a lot of us are, though, that you meet somebody and then that's it, like your life is perfect?
Well, that was a large part of the training, or sort of my implicit part of the background, is that you're going to need a pair, somebody to pair off with.
To be happy?
To be happy, yeah.
In order to be happy.
Right.
Okay.
And so when I met my teacher, Ajaan Geoff in Thailand, and so he was perfectly happy without any pairs.
Yes.
Said, okay, this is something that, and it was based on his own inner skills. That was something that intrigued me, that you could actually develop these skills.
That, yeah, to me as well. Again, it's a cultural thing. There's a lot of things, whether we're going to use programming or brainwashing or whatever, like you just grow up to believe that's just how it is again, and like that you need to, in order to exist or be happy.
Right.
Okay, we could go on with that forever. Okay, so you took a religious, this is back. Okay, I was going to say you took a religious studies class, and that's where you learned about meditation. Was that in Chiang Mai?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So at that point, so okay, so you're studying at that point for like a couple of years, right? Before, because you didn't get ordained. Like, tell me the process from
Okay, I
that
went and stayed
point.
with my teacher for a couple of months, and then thinking, okay, I've learned how to meditate. I'll go back home. And then I went back home and I was looking at all the alternatives for careers I could take, and nothing seemed appealing. And I
Mm-hmm.
talked to a number of people within the different careers, like academia and government and that sort of stuff. Nobody seemed happy. I kept thinking about, my teacher, he's a lot happier back there on that mountain, sitting
Mm-hmm.
by himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I figured, if I really want to do this seriously, I got to go back and study more.
Mm-hmm.
So after
Mm-hmm.
about 2 years here back here in the States, I returned to Thailand in 1976,
Mm-hmm.
and he took me on. And at first he was a little bit dubious because the first time I'd hoped to stay a little bit longer than I actually did, but I got a case of malaria, and then from the malaria I developed gastritis, and then just kind of collapsed and left.
Oh,
And so
yes.
he wanted to make sure that I was going to stick it out the first, on the return. So the first year I was back, he was pretty tough on me,
Mm-hmm.
but I know I stuck it out. I'm glad I did.
Yeah, yeah. Do you so learning all the language, so a lot of people don't know, okay, so there's the text, which I don't know what to call it, is the original language
Pali.
of Pali, and then there's Thai. How did you really briefly on that, how did you, I guess, because I don't know how difficult it is to learn Pali, like how did you get into all of that and just start going? Like you just went because you have over 1,000 that you've translated.
A thousand discourses, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with the
When did that
Thai,
happen?
the Thai I found very intuitive. I don't know why. I was over there, and I guess learning a language in the place where people speak it helps an awful lot.
Of course. And then you just got into it because you were already a writer and like all into that stuff. So you just,
Well, I felt if I was going to understand my time in Thailand, I'd better learn Thai.
right. Uh-huh. So let's do a fun little exercise in basics of Thai 101 to tell everybody. What?
Okay.
I want to hear you go. Okay, so for everybody at the end of what you're saying, and you correct me, sir, okay, if I'm doing anything wrong. Okay, so at the end of every sentence or structure, the female, me, I would say ka, and
Right.
you would say kap. And so there's 5 tones. So if you don't say them properly, they can mean many different things.
Right, and some things you really don't want them to mean.
Yes, yes. And so one of the things, so what everybody knows, and when you go to the restaurant, you can talk like most people will greet you and say, hello. And this is, how are you, right? Sawadee ka, right? Sawadee
And I would
ka.
say sawadee ka.
Okay. And so, or if you would want to say, which they don't always say, like, how are you? They don't really say, how are you, right?
Really,
Sawadee.
they don't. They sometimes will ask you, have you eaten yet?
Right.
Then kao dia.
Yin cow. Yin cow. Yes. And, or what else you want to know, if they want to know, like, where are you going? By
By
teal.
By
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 nai.
by
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 nai.
teo, by tam tura. This depends on what you're doing.
Or going for fun.
Right.
Okay, and basic sentence structure. I always thought that it was kind of easy, but maybe it's more so memorizing all the nouns and the adjectives. So would this be correct to say like Ajaan apnam? Ajaan is taking a shower.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what do you think is the best advice in terms of learning the language? Do you think, because I have a really good book, but is there a way that worked for you?
But usually,
Easily?
if I was going to learn, if I was going to do something in town, say like I was going to buy something, I would ask somebody, okay, these are the things I anticipate I'm going to have to say. Tell me how to say that. And then they'd write it down. And then I'd memorize that. And then I'd go and I'd try it out. And sometimes people would laugh. And I'd say, okay, why are you laughing?
Uh-huh.
And they would straighten me out.
Did you have a problem with the tones, or you think because you heard it so much, it was
Well,
not a
I
problem?
heard it so much. And also because, I have a background in music.
Oh,
And that helped a lot.
uh-huh. Okay, so tell me something. Tell me what you had for breakfast today and what you did in this morning.
วันนี้เข้าไปฉันมีหมูมีผักมีอะไรอีกมีกล้วย
Did you say you ate pork?
Mm-hmm. มีผัก we had some vegetables and I had some bananas.
Okay, good. It takes me a minute, but okay. Or
Well,
Chan
when I
Mai
first went
Lu.
over there, the place where I was staying at the university, they had a little sort of cafe, and they would fix lemonade, but they would put salt in it.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I did not want salt in my lemonade, and so I tried to figure out my cycluda.
Mm-hmm.
And so I memorized that. But then there's also the word for banana, which is glue, and the word
Uh-huh.
for fear, which is glua.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was never really confident enough to say, don't put the salt in, because I was afraid I was saying, give me a lemonade and hold the banana, or give me a lemonade and hold the fear.
Uh-huh.
And so I put up with the salt until I finally decided I actually liked it.
Uh-huh. That's funny. It sounds good. Like when people put salt on limes. So
Right,
kind of the same
right.
thing. Limeade. Okay. And then another thing that they were here that you will hear out there in the Thai world is thank you, which is kap kun ka.
Khop kun.
Kap what
Khop.
what kop
Khop
Khop.
kun ka.
kun
Khop kun.
ka. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if I say it wrong, that's just wrong.
Kop.
It doesn't mean anything
What you said
else.
was kop, which means just hold something in your mouth.
Okay, say it again.
Kop is to hold something in your mouth.
Uh-huh. What's the correct?
Khop.
Oh, okay. My Lou. Okay. So how much do you know? So people, when we do the why, which is this, as a respect thing for people that don't know about it, there's part of the cultural custom that the head is the holiest and the feet are the lowliest. I wanted to ask you, and this is why also when you go to the temple, everybody, to not point your feet when you go in there. And they're not so strict about it here in America, but, covering up and things like that. But did you ever understand how come like a woman is not, you are not supposed to take something from the monk? You know what I mean? Like he has to put it down. Do you
Right.
know why?
Well, there's a rule against monks touching women with lustful intent.
But you're just giving something to me.
I know, but I'm just giving it, but just to make sure that, just to guarantee 100% that there's no touching with lustful intent, we put it down.
Okay. And then, so this has been one of my challenges in terms of desire. We've talked about this a little bit before, because desiring anything to me, from the Buddhist perspective is, it's not that it's bad. It's just, there's always desire. You're always constant. So how would somebody who was like, how does it even make sense that, oh, that monk guy, like that's pretty, like that's cool. I want to like get into that. Like I want to know about that, but I have these lustful cravings or this whatever. Like how would you, is it just like it's not for you then? Like if you're a person that's overly consumed with that?
There are ways of substituting what they call sublimation. You find something better to desire. So to sort of take, instead of focusing your desires in that particular direction, you say, well, focus them over here.
Is it more of a human thing? Do you think from the Buddhist perspective, like all that stuff is like a human desire, the craving, whatever it is, craving,
Well, that's how we got
lusting,
here.
sugar?
That's how we got here, was because we crave. But the problem is that we're suffering from very unskillful craving. But the solution is not to have any craving at all. First, you've got to start by developing skillful cravings and skillful desires.
What do you mean we got here by craving?
That's how we get born.
What do you mean?
Well, you left your last lifetime. You say, I got to go someplace. This looks good. I'm going to go right there.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, I don't know that side.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, how do you, okay, so you didn't get ordained, or I want to say ordained till you were 26, so obviously
Right.
you've lived life. Did you ever drink?
Yep.
Okay, so you know about all of those different things, much like
Mhm.
the Buddha's path that we can talk
Yeah.
about. To how do you look at us, the country? Like,
Country,
just in general, as a people, and how everything that I just told you, that whole focus on that whole everything. What do you think about us?
I think we're kind of lost, because there are some skills that we could develop that we don't have, and we don't really know that they're out there. And so we try to find happiness in things that are not going to really satisfy us. And from that sense of dissatisfaction, then there comes a lot of irritation. And we either take it out on ourselves or we take it out on the people around us. So it's kind of a vicious cycle.
So do you look at all these people out here, with their their jobs and their lives, or when you were way back then, like, did you think like, Not to say that they're crazy or that like you were just like, I'm not into that. That doesn't appeal to me. Too
Well,
stressful.
first it was simply that doesn't appeal to me. I think this must be something better in life. And when I found my teacher, I said, oh, here's somebody who's really wise and really happy. And it's all coming from within. I've got to develop my own inner resources. We have all these potentials within us that we don't develop. That's the problem. And it's like when you're working with the breath and breath meditation, most people think about breath, all there is in and out. But part of the training is that the breath is kind of the energy flow throughout the entire body. And you can learn how to control that. You can learn how to direct the energy in different places. You can learn how to develop a strong sense of well-being in the body simply by the way you breathe. And then in terms of your mind, you can teach your mind how to think in different ways that are actually more conducive to learning how to forgive people in your family, forgive people in the past, forgive yourself for things you've done, how to deal with difficult emotions, when you're in difficult situations, learning how to talk to yourself in new ways that you're using the potential you have for your own inner wisdom for a much better purpose.
Well, I think too, as first responders or anybody, a lot of us haven't been able to been taught how to work with our emotions. Right. So them going to these calls and these different things, they can definitely benefit from meditation and just being still and also not reacting, because some of that anxiety and stuff, it's almost like a fear. It could be a fear response. Right. And if you don't know what to do with it, it's just going to cause more anxiety.
Yeah, well, people just tend to bottle it up. Either they bottle up or they take it out on somebody else.
So Oh, of course. And then the anger and being able to manage our emotions. So what's a quick little, I was going to say like a simple basic meditation, I like to talk about, doesn't have to be, 20, 30 minutes. If they just want to like do a basic, definitely your website, go to Basics for Beginners. Right. And that has a bunch of little clips, right?
Right.
But do you have anything right now? Just close your eyes and just like or something else?
Tell people to close their eyes and breathe deeply for a couple in and out breaths. And notice where in the body you feel the breath. And then ask yourself, does long breathing feel good? And in the beginning, it tends to feel good because it's kind of refreshing, but after a while, it begins to feel a bit too much. And so then you can change the rhythm. You can make it deeper, more shallow, heavier, lighter, faster, slower, shorter, longer, or in short, out long, in long, out short, to sort of balance the needs of the body. And then you systematically go through the different parts of the body and say, how does the breathing feel, say, down in my stomach? How does the breathing feel in the middle of my chest? How does the breathing feel in my neck? How does it feel in my head? And then go down the back, down the arms, down the legs. And that way you sort of anchor yourself in your body with a sense of feeling at home. That the energies in the body are not strange and not doing weird things, but you learn how to coordinate them.
I don't think I've ever done this like this.
Mm-hmm.
I need to do I need to do this. Okay. Good. Okay. And I highly recommend going and checking out the website, because again, your voice and just everything is there for the person. Just even for the beginning steps. And there's quick little like 3 minutes. There might even, 3 minutes.
I think there's a 7-minute meditation. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about what the heck we are talking about. And, Buddhism, I look at it as a philosophy. Some people might call it something else, or religion, and organized religion. So both you and I grew up, I would say mine was pretty strict on the Baptist. Yours was? Presbyterian. I don't know much about that. And so to me, I would define it as organized religion is more a strict set of rules and boundaries. And I don't think it dives in dealing with all the aspects of the self and talking about the soul and the life journey and that sort of stuff and more. But also religion, I do feel, this is my experience, that it does judge you. And basically, if you are a good person or not, right? If you don't follow these rules, you're going to hell. Mm-hmm. And I do feel like in my specific one, Baptist ostracized people. And so that pastor that day that said, I remember sitting there, that he said that it was wrong to be gay. And from that point on, it will crack you up that I was reading, I don't know that I felt bad. I was reading my Clive Barker book in Sunday school class underneath the table because I did not want to speak up to my stepmom that I didn't want to go anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't believe it, but I was so disgusted about it, and just the non-loving, not feeling like it gave me any sense of freedom in way of thinking. And so that's kind of what started me on my path, and my mom bringing, when I would go to visit her, bring the monks around and stuff like that. So what is your opinion in terms of, if you had to describe organized religion and this, which I consider a spiritual philosophy of mastering your mind
Okay,
and all of that?
I think every religion is aiming at trying to find true happiness in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt that in my upbringing in Christianity, it was really lacking the sense of having a skill to go about how do you give your mind a really good grounding? How do you deal with issues coming up in the mind so that you feel more in control of what your mind is doing, and then you can actually develop your inner resources better.
Can I ask you though, right there, like, is there something you struggled with a lot? Like, because you mentioned this, you wanted a skill to develop. Was it something like that you were stressed about daily living that was such a problem?
Well,
Or too many thoughts?
For me as a Presbyterian, one of the things that is hard to take is something called predestination, which is the idea that God has created people ahead of time and knowing that they're going to go to hell, even before they've been born.
What? Huh?
Yeah. And that just didn't seem right at all.
Predetermined that you're going to hell.
We call it a predestination. He knows beforehand who's going to go to heaven, who's going to go to hell. And he goes ahead and he creates people who are going to go to hell anyhow.
Wow.
Yeah. So that bothers me a lot.
Maybe there's lots then of all these different, of the Christian, lots of
that's why we all have these different sects. Yeah, they disagreed on issues like this.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that was that was a huge part of your basis for everything you did.
Yeah.
So
there must be some other way of going about spiritual life than this.
So what would be an example? Like, you'd be like, oh, I better not go down the street and play at so-and-so's house because, they're always getting into trouble or whatever. And so what would be an example? Were you just am I the one who's going to go to hell? What's
exactly.
an example?
Yeah. Even if I, tried to have a good life, but if I was predestined to go to hell, I was going to go to hell, and there's no choice about that.
Oh, okay.
That scared me.
Okay, this makes sense. Yeah, that affects your daily life, I'm sure. Everything you do. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Okay. So anything else though that you want to say about that? We're all going towards happiness. I feel like oneness, we're all going for, that's why the dividing, religion.
Well, I think we're looking for happiness, and how long it's going to take different people to get there, it really depends on the individual.
Mm-hmm. And so do you believe in, so the parts 2 of Buddhism, so that's what I believe, right? The mastering of the mind, the monkey mind, relieving of suffering, because Buddha's story is basically, he found out the ways of how to alleviate suffering. For those people that haven't read Siddhartha, right? That would be the number 1 book to read. And then I feel like everybody knows about that. So, but Dhammapada are his writings.
He never wrote anything down, but his students had been trained in how to memorize long passages of texts. This is part of the Indian tradition. And so, his discourses, some of his spontaneous poems, these all got memorized. And then over the years, they got written down. In addition to that, then he did lay down the rules for the monks and the nuns. He said, we're going to have this special order of people who devote their lives totally to the practice. But in order to deserve the support of everybody else, they're going to have to live their lives in accordance with certain rules. Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, he has what's called the Dharma, which is his teaching, and then the Vinaya, which is the rules by which the monks and the nuns would live. Mm-hmm. And this was all memorized. It wasn't written down until about 200 or 300 years after the Buddha passed away.
That's crazy. I forgot to tell everybody too, so there's many different types of Buddhism. We're just talking about this one because this is what resonates with me. And so if they go off and learn about Zen, there's a Vietnamese, there's Japanese, there's all these different ones. So just pick whatever resonates with you. Right. And they might have a completely Sri Lankan, Tibetan. Everybody has heard about Tibetan, especially when Richard Gere and these people were doing it. So let's a little bit tell them, I know I should probably know this by heart. Okay, if you were to break it down for Eightfold Path and Four Noble Truths, what do people, if they're just learning about this on a very simple level, Can we talk a little bit about that? It's just use it as like a focus
Yeah, the Buddhist,
point.
his basic analogy for his teaching was a path of practice. It wasn't something just to sit down and memorize and discuss. It was more, these are things you can do. And you start out with right view, which is the understanding of what, on the one hand, that you are responsible for your actions and your actions will have consequences. And then that goes on to a higher level when he talks about the Four Noble Truths. And the first truth is there is suffering. The suffering is caused by, it is your clinging. The cause of suffering is the second truth, which is craving. And that's particularly three types of craving: craving for sensuality, craving to take on an identity in a particular world. And then when you don't like that identity, you try to destroy it. Those are the three kinds of craving that cause suffering. It is possible to put an end to that craving and arrive at the end of suffering. And then there's the path, which is the Eightfold Path. So that's all right view. That's the first factor. Second factor is once you've realized that you are responsible for your actions and you've got to be very careful about what you do, particularly what you intend to do. You decide, okay, there are three types of thoughts I'm just not going to let take over my mind. Thoughts of sensuality, thoughts of ill will, in other words, wanting to see somebody suffer. Thoughts of harmfulness, you see somebody already suffering and you want to pile more on them. That's you say, I'm just going to stay away from that kind of thinking. There's right speech, where you don't lie, you don't speak in divisive ways, you don't speak harshly to people just to make them hurt their feelings, and you don't just sit around spending your time in idle chatter. That, by the way, is probably the hardest part of the path right there. Then there's right action: no killing, no stealing, no illicit sex. Right livelihood: you make your livelihood in an honest way. Right effort is any unskillful thoughts that come into the mind. If you see them coming, you try to make sure that they don't come in. If they do come into your mind, you find ways of letting them go. And then you try to replace them with skillful thoughts. And once the skillful thoughts are there, you try to develop them. That's right effort. Right mindfulness is when you decide, okay, I'm going to keep in mind one object and just keep that in mind and try to stick with it as consistently as I can and put aside any other thoughts that are not related to that object. And that gets you into the last factor, which is right concentration, where the mind settles in with that one object and has a great sense of ease, well-being, even refreshment and rapture. And then it goes into higher levels where it gets more and more refined. And so when you practice all those things together, you've got the Eightfold Path.
So I think you were born Thai in your Latinx past life or something. So a lot of things I think too are natural for me, but I've also had to develop certain things. But I think, it's definitely a skill, because when there's so much going on in somebody's mind, whatever it is, their baggage from their past or these things as an adult, finding solutions, you know what I mean? There's different forms. This could be therapy for some people. So, but they have to look inside.
I find it useful to think of the mind as being like a committee. You've got lots of people in there. And just because there's one committee member as being especially, obstreperous and disagreeable doesn't mean the whole mind has to be that way.
Right.
And you say, okay, yeah, I've got some unskillful thoughts in here, but I've also got some skillful thoughts. And which ones right now do I want to side with? Which ones do I trust more? And so it's seeing it as a committee that it takes away, the feelings that sometimes people have feeling guilty about having unskillful thoughts in their mind that they want to. So thoughts of anger, thoughts of ill will. Say, okay, that's just one member of the committee. Let's find what other members of the committee you have in there. Strengthen the good ones.
Well, I think another reason to find, again, the finding happiness or maintaining happiness is that I think, again, because of the culture, like a lot of us think, when I have those things, right? When I have the house, when I have the person, when I have the fat diamond ring, when I have all these friends, all of this sort of stuff, it's kind of like a circular or cyclical pattern of just like a constant, you know what I mean? And the ups and downs. So I just think another reason, for the seeking happiness and going in and life purpose and calling, that we're here to do more.
Yeah, I mean, when you take care of a lot of the stuff inside you, you find you have a lot more energy to help other people. I mean, sometimes Theravada, which is the branch of Buddhism they have in Thailand, is accused of being selfish because you're looking after, you're training your own mind for your own happiness. But one of the things I found about my teacher was that he was an extremely kind person. And his basic theory was that you take care of your own issues inside, and you have a lot more energy and a lot more ability to help others.
Yes. I think just sharing people again, because like I said, a lot of this really is a cultural thing of just what we've seen on TV and what people do. And nobody believes me because, I grew up in Pennsylvania. I'm like, California people are different. The best example that I have that I can give is on the East Coast, people let you over. On the West Coast, people speed up, like on the road. Like it really is true, and nobody believes me. And so I'm always making these comparisons because they might only think this is just like the way that it is everywhere. And that's why Thailand, it's like I just like to go back and forth. I don't need to live there. Too hot and all that sort of stuff. But like the customer service, like when you feel so loved, like you take 3 sips out of your cup, and they're filling your water. They carry the bags to your car, like at the mall. Like it's funny that they do that stuff, but they'll totally blow their nose like right in front of like you or whatever, right? Or pick their nose and just like. I'm like, how are you so polite in other ways, but like not that? And then you come back here and you're all, this again. So that's why, again, too, I've just prayed on, again, doing this show is like, hopefully in this lifetime, we will see a more compassionate country and people, and that there are good people, because that's a huge part of it too, right? It's like we do good. And then it's like, well, why'd I do that? Like they screwed me over, or, I feel like it makes us bitter.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with learning how to be compassionate with yourself and feeling, at ease within yourself, in a sense of satisfied within yourself. Then you feel like it's easier to do good for other people, regardless of how they react.
Yes, I
You're
agree.
You're not out there feeding on, I want this person to react in a particular way. Because it's like you already have good food inside. So you don't need to feed off of what they're offering.
Right. And it really doesn't matter. Just like I always tell myself that Mother Teresa saying, just do it anyway. Everything, just do it anyway. Even if you don't think anybody cares, right? All that stuff. Okay, so let's talk about, you've got 12 brothers down there, 12 white guys and 1 Thai guy. I wanted you just like, so what you said, they wanted something different. Can you just tell me, by the way, everybody, there was one that was in school to be a paramedic, but he changed his mind. Maybe when he realized all the mess involved, right?
Yeah.
So tell me though, just about them, like why did they come there? What are their stories?
Most of them have a background in they usually come around in their early 30s. So they've had some experience at work, some experience with relationships, and just felt very dissatisfied. They said there's got to be something better in life.
But they didn't know what it was, really.
Well, they saw this was another opportunity. They came to check it out.
Okay. It's pretty easy, simple, sounds like.
If we take someone as a candidate, we have them stay with us for a year first, helping around the monastery. So they get an idea, but this is what monastic life is really like, because a lot of people come in with some very romantic notions about they're going off and being a hermit alone.
Yeah.
But you actually do have to live with the other monks and get along as a community.
Tell us about your the typical day, and like what would somebody expect, like what are you guys doing down there except a lot of nothing?
Okay. Well, we get up early in the morning, around 4 or 5 o'clock, meditate until dawn. And then at dawn we come out and we have chores around the monastery, cleaning things up, getting everything ready. 8:30 the monks go for alms. Some of the monks leave the property of the monastery. They go out to the main road, which is about 1.5 miles away, and they come back. Other monks, there's a small group of lay supporters who stay in the monastery long term. They work in the kitchen. They work in the orchard. They will prepare the food. They'll put food in our bowls. We have our meal. And then after the monks have had their meal, the lay people have their meal. Everybody cleans up. And then you're free to meditate, free to study until about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And then we get together as a group. There's question and answers. And then we divide up chores for everybody. And then again, we meet as a group and have a group meditation at 7 o'clock. Usually a Dharma talk. We talk about meditation, talk about other aspects of Buddhist teachings. And then people are free to go back and meditate on their own until they're ready to go to bed.
Or get on their phones or the computer?
No. They stay off their phones.
What, all day? Or what is
But
there?
we really discourage phone use. Say you call your family if you need to, but otherwise, don't go calling up friends or things.
How many years have most of them been there?
Let's see, a couple of them have been here about 20, 15 years, 10, 5.
And just that. They don't they don't ever leave.
Oh, yeah, we do
And
leave, and we, it being part of the forest tradition, we encourage people to go out camping.
oh, I was going to ask, can you explain that?
Okay, but it goes back to the time of the Buddha. The Buddha himself, again, awakening under a tree, he would take the monks out into the forest. He would go occasionally for retreats out into the forest himself, and then when he died under a tree. And there's a tradition that he really encouraged the monks to go out into the wilderness to find some solitude, and also just deal with the hardships of forest life and use that as part of their training.
Well, I don't understand though. Why is it called that? Like, what makes it different than another?
Because you also have monasteries in villages and in cities in Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
And life
Just different.
It's quite a bit different. It's life tends to be a lot more comfortable.
But yeah, I mean, metro living and forest living.
Very different.
I don't know. I guess I'd have to. That's kind of
So
interesting.
anyway, the forest tradition we have in Thailand that was started in the end of the 19th century,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the monks who started it, and then their first couple generations of students were extremely, people of a lot of integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the 1970s, the tradition was kind of discovered by the mainstream society. Up to that point, it was kind of underground. And then Thailand was going through a crisis, kind of a national identity crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And the king learned about the forest monks, and he started visiting them and getting advice from them. And because of the example of the king, a lot of other people started going out to the forest monasteries.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about this time that a lot of Westerners also came to Thailand looking to learn about meditation, and then they ended up in the forest monasteries too.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we come here in the States, here we're at the monastery, we're out in the chaparral, right up against it.
I want to come there.
I want to come there. A couple Indian reservations. And as I said, I encourage the monks to go camping at least once a year. Of course, COVID has put knocked a little hole in that plan, but usually they get out. I like to go through the Grand Canyon.
I do want to, if I ever did come there, there's like, you can have visitors, right?
Right.
And I can just stay but there's nowhere like for us to stay. I'd have to get a hotel. Like,
no, we have guest houses.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's just talk a little bit briefly on, also I want to talk about kind of, maybe these are some techniques for the first responders or for anybody. So this, I don't know necessarily would say is a Buddhist thing, but I do feel like there are illusions we create in our mind that we believe to be true, just like sense of loss and things like that. So if we go talking about attaching and clinging to these concepts, let's just say, I don't know if I want to give the example necessarily with my mom, but it is a good one in terms of an abandonment feeling. Is there a technique or a thought or something when you are dealing with these sorts of things, like we're saying, attaching, okay, let's say abandonment. You think somebody's always going to leave you, have this idea in your mind, which in a sense, in death, they leave us. Is there would this be meditation? What would this be in processing our thoughts about these things?
The thing about one thing you think about is the fact that you're not the only person who's been abandoned. Lots of people have been abandoned, and a lot of the sting of a lot of things that drive people crazy in their lives is the fact that they sense that the universe is kind of focusing its ill will on them. We realize, okay, there are a lot of other people out there who are suffering the same sort of thing. And when you start thinking about this vast group of humanity of people who are suffering this, and it gives rise to a sense of compassion. It takes you out of your story a little bit, and you can see, okay, this is a large pattern. This is happening all over the world.
I'm not the only one.
You're not the only one.
And maybe the focusing too on like, well, what does it mean to be abandoned? Like what? And again, we were talking about security and self. Like, I know there's lots of other things going on there because we were birthed by people, you know what I mean? So like, there's like that bonding sort of thing there. Anyway, we could go deep, but this is where people need to do some writing exercises, and just that whole thing, the sense of self and security in self. And then we won't cling to the idea of that we, it's not have to be, this is going too far. Okay.
Well,
How,
but it's also good to think about, okay, there are certain things I lost in that particular relationship, but what do I still have? What good things do I still have in life?
but
Let's
how
just sit
about,
down
how about
think
it's
about
okay to be on, okay to be on your own too again?
Well, yeah.
I think that's,
And you have to realize, okay, being okay on my own means I have certain strengths that I can fall back on. What are those strengths? Sort of look into them. There was
okay.
a famous incident where one of the Buddha's primary disciples passed away, and another one of his disciples came and said, "My gosh, when so and so passed away, I just didn't know what to think." And the Buddha said, "Did he take virtue away with him? Did he take generosity? Did he take concentration, discernment, the possibility for awakening? Did he take things away? No, those things are still with us." So think about the things that you still have that you can fall back on.
Instead of focusing on the negative and all those sorts.
A sense of loss, yeah.
That's with anything I would say that meditation would help, or veering away from negative thinking. It's just
because you look
terrible.
at your thinking. You said this thinking is driving me crazy. It's making me miserable. Why do I have to think it?
We don't.
Aren't there some alternatives? And it's good to think about what are the other alternatives.
Do you think if we were going to talk about needs and wants and people feeling, again, this is going back to the culture, if people thinking that they are working so hard, right? The waiting for retirement and all these sorts of concepts, I think people need to actually just realize, like, not should, how they want to look back on their life and what they spent their time doing. And I think a lot of it, though, just comes from the stemming of like money, like thinking, that they need money and these sorts of things, of course, to take care of yourself. But when you look at it at the same time, too, if you don't really need, like, what do you need? Maybe you need to write that list, right? Like, do you need that house? Do you need those things? And like, why are you working so hard? Like, what are your reasons? Or people that are workaholics? We could go into that whole thing too,
Well, there's the whole issue about when you're kind to yourself. Exactly what's the kindest way you can treat yourself? And people, I think, lack the skills they need in order to understand it. Hey, you learn how to just breathe, and you can be happy, and you can have a sense of well-being going through your body. That changes the dynamic.
I don't think people are thinking about being kind to themselves.
Well, and when they're working, they say, "I've got to do this because I'm going to need X." Or like when you come back from work and you say, "Boy, that was a really rough day. Let me have a drink, or let me do something that's really not all that going to be good for you." But you say, "I've got to unwind." I mean, there are alternative ways of unwinding.
What are the other ways?
Meditation is the number one way.
Yes.
And if you feel too tired to sit and meditate, you can lie down and meditate and just kind of work through the breath energy all the way through the body. Just kind of clean it out. And then you realize as you're going through the day, you don't have to leave the breath. You can still talk to people and deal with the issues coming up and feel grounded in the breath energy in your body.
Well, I feel like at this point in life, there's lots of things out there for people. It's just if they want to put in the work or not, just like relationships. That's what I feel like. So until you get to that point, if it's, you're having anxiety problems or whatever it is, which, by the way, meditation is a way to help with that aside from prescription medications.
Oh, yeah.
And things like that. So I think just knowing that. So if you want to know anything more about like how I practically apply like this, again, philosophy to me in everyday living, that's a part of what I do as a coach. I do look at it as like, I kind of help people with any sort of personal struggle. And so because I came from such an introverted mindset to an extrovert, that's how I feel like that's how I've been able to help myself and resolving conflict and teaching myself those different types of things. So, I think that's actually maybe a good way to end the show, unless there's anything else that you'd like to say. And we're going to do divine mantra, which I'll tell people in a minute. I still want to. And but is there anything else? Are you free for Zoom calls? Or are you too busy with your other 40 that you do a week?
I've got a couple coming up, but maybe sometime down the line.
Like if people want to, I typed it up as in, think of him like a chaplain. But like if anybody, like, it doesn't have to be like how to become a monk or anything like that. But if they just want to chat with you more, or,
I'd say
you know,
first go to the Dharma Talks
website.
Yeah. And you try the meditation. And if you have any questions, just give us a call.
Okay, dhammatalks.org, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll type that up. It's DHAMMA,
Right.
Dhamma Talks. Okay, you've been practicing for 44 years, so you have some experience. And yes, if they in help. So I wanted to put that out there, and you do take donations,
Mhm.
which I ended up figuring it out. So yes, people go look into that because it's very interesting. And I was already saying, so one of the reasons too that I wanted to do this show is to put it out there because I do think Buddhism is misunderstood. I think just in the past it has been looked at as like basically we worship statues is number one, and that just not knowing, you know, much about it. But I think as long as people are hearing more about meditation, you know, and they are like, there's all these apps and stuff now, people are, they are really becoming more open to it. It's not such an oddity anymore. So yes, people, please reach out to me if you have any other questions, and or Ajaan. And we are going to end. So chanting is sound is, so this is how I look back at going back to our roots of healing, that there's sound, touch, the earth, and then elements like gems and crystals and different things like that provide healing. Talking could also be as well. So chanting is something, whatever resonates. There's different styles and different cultures that offer chanting, and it's whatever resonates with you. But I know with me, it really touches my soul, especially when it's like I almost always am crying at the temple whenever I hear it. So just whatever, accept it. But I asked Ajaan if he would do just a few minutes of something called the divine mantra, which is basically, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, that basically it's saying honor to him, the blessed one, the awakened one.
Okay, there's that. But it goes on from there, and it basically says it deals with the 6 elements: earth, water, wind, fire, space, and consciousness. And then towards the end, there's a passage where it says, through the purity of these elements, may all disasters, all dangers go away. And then it talks about the power of goodwill on bringing happiness. So I thought I would chant that little part for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. You ready?
Ready? Okay.
Okay.
Tatu bari sundhanu bhavena sambaduka sambhaya sambaroga vimuchanti yatyu dhammato deliyang sambati sampatataya sambhavantan lokang metta karuna mudita ubekha sagatena cetasa chaturi sambalito aviharati sukhang supati sukham patipuchati apapakang supinan pasati manusanam biyohoti amanusanam biyohoti devata rakanti Nasa angiwa visangwa sukangwa gamati Tuvatang jitang samadhinati Mukawang no vipasidati Asambho hokarang garoti Uttaranga badi vichando brahmaluga bhagavati Yati udhanato diriyang supadi sampadatas Where sugati we know Katang bunya palamahang sabari bhangi bhavan today Bhavata sambha mangalang lakantu sambha devata Samabudhanubhavana Sambadhamanubhavana Sambasanghanubhavana Sati hontu nirantarang. You really did cry.
I know. You're all, I'm so powerful and magical. That was a little bit different. Maybe it was the end part of what I've heard.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay. It's always good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kap.
Yes. Kap kun ka. Did I say it right this time?
Cob.
Oh God. Kop.
Cob.
Kop.
Cob.
Kop kun ka. Okay.
Right,
I'll have to practice. It more. Okay. Thank you, Ajaan. And I guess that's it, everybody.
Okay.
My website again is hold on before you go. rockyourlifewithnorafinch.com, and check out my shows also, the full list on Spotify and iTunes and all over everywhere. Okay, thanks for listening in. Bye.
Okay. Bye.